Creating a real world impact and fostering positive change often requires more than just good intentions. It necessitates a comprehensive approach that combines organizational support, mentorship, education, and practical experience. Whether it's addressing social issues, or technology, or personal goals, the synergy of support, mentorship, and hands on practice provides any organization for realizing their meaningful and lasting change. And when you talk about fitness, there's a lot more to fitness than just exercise. It is the training of the heart, the mind, and the body as one. Hi, I'm Tej. I host Chizuba Talks, and today, Point One Vision is a nonprofit that aims to equip, educate, and empower the fitness industry in what it means to be strong to serve. I have with me Sarah Mayo, and she's going to talk to us about this organization. Sarah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Sarah, I'm very excited about fitness, right? So somebody has to be
Mhm.
passionate about fitness. Uh, well, before we start, could you just introduce yourself and tell us about the role that you play within the organization and what inspired the creation of this organization?
Mhm. Thank you. So, my name is Sarah Mayo. I am the executive director and the founder of Point One Vision. We have been, we've had our 501c3 status since 2019. I would say the inspiration for it started for me around 2017. I had a major shift in my own personal career as an athlete. I was really full time in the sports industry. And I just had this moment of realization of the selfishness with which I was pursuing what I was doing.
Mhm.
And I really wanted to shift that. I understood that there was a heart level and a soul level to exercising the body, that there's such an integration of our mental and emotional health with the way that we move and the way that we practice that. And for so long, fitness for me had been a tool of suppression and escape. But I knew it had the possibility of really changing people's lives from a perspective of the nervous system, trauma healing, relationship building, so much more. And so, what I set out to do was to be able to create a community, create an experience, create opportunities where people, like you mentioned, to live out the motto of what it means to be strong to serve. How can we pursue our own health and fitness as a vessel by which to serve other people, to honor this as a temple of our heart? And how do we move and breathe and exercise our strength and our voice from that position? So that's essentially kind of the inspiration to it. And everything from then to now has been an incredible period of growth and learning.
Yeah, that's great. So, what they say about having your cup full, unless you have your cup full, you are not able to give to the others, right? So,
Mm,
unless you are fit, then fitness doesn't happen elsewhere.
yeah.
Now, tell us about how you go about this. Does somebody come to you and say that, I want to get into a fitness journey where I am, developing myself first? Do you look
Mhm.
at that aspect or do you look at the aspect of serving the community first? How do you go about it?
Mm. That's such a good question. I'd love to answer that. Which I'm actually, in order to answer that, I'm going to rewind to kind of that analogy that you made about the cup being full. And I think that's a great analogy. I don't mean to like put that down. I think people use it often. I think the intent of it is really good. But something that I often talk about in that analogy is that when you think about filling up a cup,
Mhm.
there it comes down to this idea of like maybe depravity or lacking, because if we pour anything out, we immediately want to fill it
Uh-huh.
back up, right? And so we're constantly thinking, how can I fill my cup? How can I hold on to what's here? Because if I dump it all out, oh my gosh, I have to do all this work to fill it back up again. So we see all these conversations around self-love and self-care, and of course taking care of our body
Mhm.
is important. But what I like to do is flip the analogy or the visualization there as a
Mhm.
fountain. Whereas a fountain is constantly pouring out, right? It constantly has this streaming out because it constantly has this this
Flow.
push back into it. Exactly. There is a flow. You never have to like hold on to what you have because it's constantly already coming from somewhere. And so although I think the logical algorithm seems to be that, oh, well, we have to take care of ourselves first in order to take care of others, I actually believe that coming from a place of how do I orient my life, how do I position myself, how do I do what I'm going to do unto the service of others, like where does that drive come from? I think like asking that why and the how is so important, that personal belief system that someone carries, to figure out like how do I fuel my fountain, where does my fountain pull from, so that I can always be pouring out. Now, sometimes with a fountain we have to clean it out. After the fall it's full of leaves and grime and gunk, and sometimes we have to get rid of that. Maybe it's our own traumatic
True.
experiences, maybe it's our own like biases and prejudices that get in the way of
Prejudice,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, and so being able, how do we again like remove that, maybe through exercise, and I don't even necessarily mean like fitness, but just how do we practice that so we can create this beautiful flow of, again, like a clean fountain. And so I
Yeah,
do, I
I
think
like that
when you're,
analogy.
yeah, I love that picture of it, or that philosophy of let's serve others first and see how that makes us stronger, of mind, body, spirit, heart.
True, very true. And so tell us about the programs that you are running, and how many people are taking this program and how is it helping
Hmm.
them?
Yeah. Well, so I think on that note of starting with that service aspect, I'll talk about our serve program, essentially, which is kind of our outreach program, if you will. Um, we partner. I think fundamentally, my vision, the vision of Point One, naturally, kind of as an extension of being the founder, is deeply integrating in partnership, is not to come in as an outsider, not to want to, because it's different than a business, right? Is not to need to lay claim to anything, but how can we come alongside other nonprofit organizations or other people who are doing really incredible things in their community, and how can we help them become stronger? How can we help provide endurance? How can we like inject more resources and energy into the good that they're doing? And so we have a number of domestic partners. So we'll put together like a missions team that's, they're going into these places to help support that organization, such as Kauai, where we partner with the Kala Foundation to work on, help build up their program or support their program that works with youth struggling with suicide and drug addiction. We
Okay.
partner with the Beautifully Flawed Foundation. They work with young men and women with limb loss. There's a wide range of things domestically that we do. I think as long as it fits within our mission, I want to try to be able to say yes to that. We've partnered with, it's called Rock Steady. They do like essentially like boxing programs for people with Parkinson's or dementia, more like a older senior group. That, yeah, it's really special. And internationally, right now, our primary targets or places we're working. One is Uganda in Africa. And so we just set a team there this June who helped finish our livelihood and sustainability project, really helping to empower the community there. We've got projects in the Middle East on mentorship, especially of women. So that's kind of, to kind of float the top of things. That's our serve program, if you will. Um, and then we have our full armor program, which I think by, convention is the like really fitnessy element of things. Like that's the one that looks like from the offset, we're going into gyms, we're running different programs, we have an assessment to kind of determine like where someone's at in their nervous system and how that impacts their or reflects their mental and emotional health. Really looking at this holistic view of fitness as basically this like five-sided figure of physical, mental, emotional, relational, and spiritual health. And so those, at least at this point, are mostly like a domestic program. There's an online branch to that. We also have our full armor community curriculum. So people who are leaders in their communities who want to integrate more of this heart aspect to fitness can essentially utilize our curriculum so that they can focus on the people there and like, you know, say organizing events rather than necessarily having like come up with the material entirely themselves. So right now I would say that as an overview is like our big areas that we're like working into, and I'm really excited just to see in the coming years. I mean, we're relatively a newer organization, and so it's been really neat like this year to feel like there's a lot of like catalytic activity of a lot of these things really just trying to take off and grow on their own.
Right. So it sounds like you're partnering with a lot of organizations with varied causes, and if it fits into your mission, that is basically starts with fitness and get being healthy yourself, so that you can give to
Mm-hmm.
the others. Now,
Yeah.
if somebody comes to you and says, "You know what, I need to work on myself," without thinking about what I want to do for the community, they say
Mm-hmm.
that I want to work on myself. What kind of guidance do you give them? Is it some? Do you find the right fit of program for them, or do you
Mm-hmm.
consult the experts on your team about their physical and mental
Mm-hmm.
health,
That's a
and
good
then you put
question.
them into the right?
I think the idea of meeting someone where they're at is really important because you know I'm explaining my philosophy is like no, like we start with how we serve and we build strength from there, but not everyone has that perception, not everyone has that philosophy, or they haven't seen the calculus of how that actually works. And so I
Mhm.
think if someone were to outright come into me in that way of like, hey, I'm not really like I don't have the bandwidth or the time to help other people, that's just not,
Mm.
it's not for me, I just like want to get fit, I probably really for us like I'd point them to our templates. We have these like training templates that are I believe they're 6 or 8 week, I haven't looked at them in a bit, but they're these blocks of a fitness training program essentially that incorporates a little bit of like self-reflection or journaling prompts for them to consider as they're going through this, and integrates a lot of breath work, and how to breathe as you move. And
Mhm.
the thing about the breath is that it impacts us at a neurological level, at a physiological level. There's a really powerful impact on the nervous system. And naturally, as a result of that, there begins to be, I think, like a stirring of the pot, if you will. And
Change. Mm.
so, yes, exactly. And then I think that begins to prompt questions of like, they start to feel a change that's more than just getting bigger muscles or getting stronger, because they start to feel more relaxed, they start to feel more internal peace, they start to be able to, you know, they're not living in survival anymore, so they can observe the needs of people around them and they can begin to care. And my job ultimately as a coach, I think even in developing the coaches that I or we get to work with, isn't just helping people stay where they're already at, for sure, isn't necessarily even just helping them achieve their goals. Like, I'm actually not really a goals person, but how do we
Mhm.
restructure priorities in a way that increases our own joy and begins to shift the mind on how we pay attention to others. And so my hope with someone like that is, of course, meet them where they're at. Hey, cool, we have these fitness templates. You can focus on you. You can go work out. It's going to make you fitter and stronger, and you're going to feel better for you. But there's going to be a shift too. And I hope that they might feel that, see what else we're doing, and be able to
Mm.
grow and evolve and change from the inside out.
True, true. So that's what they say, isn't it? I mean, if you're in some sort of turmoil or something, you just go for a walk and it, gets your thoughts in
Mm-hmm.
order. So I think that philosophy works. So there is a scientific basis for all of this, and you are just, kind of putting it into practice and making sure that people are understanding that these five aspects you talked about: spiritual, mental, relationships. Let's take a break to understand what Jazuba is. Everyone at some point ponders on how this beautiful life can be made more meaningful. Maybe you're a leader trying to enhance your employees' experience at your organization. Or you already work for the community and seek volunteers with state of the art skills to strengthen your nonprofit. Whatever your situation, know that you can make a difference. Chizuba began with this very vision, a vision to facilitate every skill and every passion in the world in meeting a social need. Corporate volunteering has several benefits for both businesses and organizations. In parallel, experienced and enthusiastic volunteers join NGO workers, enabling them to serve the community more effectively. Chizuba offers everyone looking to add purpose and meaning to their lives a chance to connect or volunteer virtually with non-profit organizations from over 100 countries around the world. Visit www.chizuba.net and explore opportunities to find meaning. Chizuba, your platform to do good. And now, back with our guest. Now, let's talk about relationships here. When we, why do you think these are the programs that you are running? Now, as a coach, you've been doing this for so many years. As a coach, could you tell how and why we are seeing a deterioration in relationships or in mental health? Why is this happening? I'm not kind of nailing you here, but I just
Yeah.
want to understand why is this happening, and do you think there is a solution at the baseline there?
That's such a good, ginormous question. I wish I
Yeah,
could like solve the world's problems, but
I
I definitely have like thoughts on that. And I mean, I
yes.
think the best that we can do is like be hopeful, right? Like without hope, we're dead. Like without hope, people die, whether, from the inside out and sometimes the physical too. But I think that again, I think the intent of the self-love culture is at its core, it's meant to be a good thing. But I think we hear so much more conversation nowadays about like loving yourself so much, and of course, like we should, like there's an extent of that, but we put such a primary devotion to that as a culture, and such
Mhm.
this necessity for like do the thing that makes you feel good, do the thing that is your truth, do the thing that makes you happy. And I think that
Mhm.
more than ever, we're seeing, to speak to what you're saying, we're seeing people more lonely, more anxious, more depressed. I think especially with the global pandemic in the last few years, like that adds a
Right,
whole nother
yes.
factor. But I don't think we can just blame the pandemic or lockdowns. Like I don't think that that is the root issue, although it certainly didn't help. But I think we're just looking at the algorithm in the wrong way. And I know
Mhm.
that logically it doesn't necessarily make sense. But for me, and this kind of has to do with that origin story, was having this moment of like, of realization. I think we all come to that point, like we have this revelation, and do I actually, like, theoretically, sure, that sounds like it could be true, but actually switching the way that we live our lives, switching the way that we make our decisions about relationships or what we're going to do in the next career move that we're going to make and the way that we prioritize things, actually exercising that is a whole different thing. And it ultimately comes down, I think, to surrender, of being able to take that leap of faith off the cliff and trust that like the wind is going to come up underneath you and carry you, rather than that you have to fight it all the way down. And so I think,
Mhm.
this idea that service unto others, whatever the why or the how or the mechanism is to get there, to have faith in that and to just take like one baby step at a time to move towards it, of again, like rather than seeking my own happiness or my own thing, putting others first. And I have infinitely more joy and peace in my life, like not just mentally and emotionally, although certainly that. I have better relationships, my spiritual health is better, my physical health is better and more balanced than when I was going after what I thought was my dream life, what I thought was going to make me happy, going after the podium, going after these big audacious goals just because I could and because it served me best. So
Mhm.
I hope that, with opportunities like this to be able to have, and this message isn't unique to me, but for people to really seek out like what are the communities and places and the people and the environments that are saying like, hey, like let's flip the equation on what the world is saying.
Right. Taking that leap of faith. So
Yeah.
true. Most of the times we end up overthinking about
Yeah.
certain issues and then not doing the small baby step that we need to take. So that's great
Yeah.
advice, Sarah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sarah, my next question to you is, do you remember or can you think of a particular incident that has stayed in your heart and that has made your mission of,
Mm.
like worth your while, that you
My
love doing what
why?
you do?
Yeah. Um, the first thing that pops to my mind, and I think reflects back to the importance of partnerships that I mentioned, is I had gone to Uganda a number of times between like I think it was like 2011 and 2013. I had a few like random opportunities to join other people. I went there by myself. I took a team there, and I loved being there, but like something just felt off, I think is the best way I could describe it. And I had read this book called When Helping Hurts. I believe it's by Brian Corbett. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's the name of the author. And it's essentially about this idea of how short term missions or philanthropic outreach teams, things like that, especially in cultures where poverty, like third world nations or developing nations are, how they can really be damaging in the short, or they can really be damaging when we're just thinking short term, and how important it is to partner with the local culture and people who understand like the core issue of what's going on there, and not creating this essentially like white savior complex. And I had read that somewhere between like I think my like second and third trip there, and I remember I was in this cannibalistic village on an island on Lake Victoria, one of the more remote areas of Uganda or Africa that you could get to. And I wasn't like fearful by any means. Like they had, the people there were like still very relational, wanting to connect. They just suggested that we don't go into people's houses alone. And we were
Yeah.
passing out, we were passing out like candy and toys and all, and like I don't know, diapers and other medical supplies and things like this, which objectively seemed good because they don't have anything. But I remember getting cornered between these like mud huts by these kids, and they were starting to like scratch at my skin, asking for candy and saying Muzungu Muzungu, which basically means like white person, white person. And there was just this like rabid thing of like coming for me, like I could solve all their things by this piece of candy, and it felt so wrong to me. And so it was not too long after that point that I basically committed to not, as much as I loved Uganda and in some ways like felt at home there, was committed not to do something like that again until I had a better picture, if ever, of like what something like that, like what an outreach like that should look like. And so
Hmm.
basically, there's been 10 years between that last trip when that happened and that like revelation, and then when I just recently returned and took a team with me. And that again has been such a foundational aspect to how we build up are at least like that serve aspect of what we do, and that like necessity to partner and do things with others so that the culture can change from the inside out. And maybe that's an international culture, an overseas culture, impoverished culture, or maybe it's just cultures, such as in Hawaii or in San Diego or wherever else in the US, is how do we give people a hand up instead of a handout. And so I've shared that story before, but that's definitely like the first one that comes to mind of like the why and the drive and the passion. And I really want people to know, at least that's like my heart in it, and to for us to be able to see, again, I'm using Uganda as an example, but the way that we've got to like partner with Ugandan founded, Ugandan operate nonprofits. I mean, I'll tell you, like, it moves slower than if we were to partner with some other Western organization already at work there.
True.
But I want to
True.
make sure that Ugandans are pulling themselves out of their cult, like out of the muck part of the culture, and that they are the
True.
ones like being empowered and equipped to be strong. And like the friendships and relationships that have grown out of that, the way I get to see people come alive who just were barely trying to like survive, and now they're thriving and they're feeling joyful, and sure, sometimes it looks like fitness, but it's really about so much more than that. And So if that
Mhm.
answers your question, that's kind of like the moment or the story I'd
Yes.
share.
Yeah. That's interesting. Interesting, a little scary, and very,
It was
very,
intense.
yeah, it was intense. So yeah, that's maybe a lesson for everybody here to understand that, just going and helping out, saying that I've donated so much money over here may not be the right thing. Not only going on physically spending time is not the only thing. You could
Hmm.
also you could find your ways of giving back. You could,
Hmm.
weave your way through finding out what works for the target audience that you want to. That's a great lesson there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Well, it just feels so
And
good. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
sorry, yeah, no, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, like, it can feel so good to like go pass out candy to kids who've never tried candy, or it
It's the
can
easy
feel,
way out.
it personally feels good, but like then you're taking from them. You're taking because it feels good to you. It can feel great to like dump $100 or $1,000 or whatever into some
Very
random
true.
project, and but if you don't know how that's being used and the ethos and the philosophy of like say where you're donating that, like you may actually like sadly be causing more of the underlying problem. I think, especially
True,
when it
yeah.
comes to people who are hurt and impoverished and broken, like we've got to look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, you could probably be exacerbating the problem
Yeah.
in
Yeah,
that case.
sadly. And people mean well, but like
Yeah,
intentions don't necessarily matter when you end up hurting people.
true, true. Sarah, I understand this is one example that you explained. Now, what are the other challenges that you face in your organization, and how can somebody help if somebody's
Mm,
listening to this podcast and wanting to help? So,
yeah.
your challenges and the support that you require.
Man, I think being perfectly honest, like bandwidth, I think some of it's just like being the founder of a relatively new nonprofit organization without like a huge funding source is, again, it was a leap of faith for me to do this, to start this. I just knew in my bones and my heart of heart that this is what I was called to do. I had no idea what I was doing. I had the right people come alongside me at the right time. And it's been beautiful to see that come alive. And like I said, like I think 2023 has been a really catalytic year, and more people becoming part of the community and joining, like our staff for camps and things like that. But I think just having more visibility, like I'm so grateful to be on this podcast today, of just like having more people hear the story. I think the why is really important. And whether it's coming to events, or being a part of one of our serve teams, or for those who are financially capable of doing so, and if they listen to this podcast or they look on our website or they come to, I want people to like trust us with their financial resource. Like that's not a light thing. And so if we in any way can like earn people's trust to give, I mean, money isn't everything, but it does really drive things forward. And so, I mean,
Absolutely.
that's certainly like a need that we have. I think just growth. Like, I think the challenge is just being new, and that it takes good things sometimes, some time to grow. And so I'm not necessarily like impatient for it. I know that like the right time and the right people will
It
come.
will come.
Yeah, it just, you just keep taking one step at a time. You just keep jumping off the cliff and you see what happens.
Absolutely. Well, Sarah, it was lovely talking to you. And my advice to you would be hang in there.
Thank you.
Everything will come to you. You're doing the right thing. And you're being very brave too in
Thank you so
taking up
much.
uh, international causes also. So
Mm,
you're not only helping people, with their body, it's also the mind and uncovering true potential.
yeah, thank you so much for the encouragement.
Thank you. I love talking to you right now.
You
Bye.
too. Me too.